Chair, we're ready to start now.
Okay, thank you. Good morning and welcome to Teambridge District Council's Virtual Planning Committee on Tuesday, 27th of October 2020. I'm your chair, Mike Haynes. All participants here today are taking part remotely and the committee is being viewed online and recorded, so please bear this in mind throughout the meeting. In the event of a break in the internet connection or a power cut, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. If we are not able to reconnect after 15 minutes, the meeting will be adjourned and reconvened at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for further details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Please keep your points short and do not interrupt when someone else is speaking. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand and wait to be called. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, teambridge.gov.uk. I will now start the committee by doing a roll call of everyone here present. When you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. Right, Chris, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
Present.
Councillor Bullivant.
Present.
Councillor Clarence.
Present.
Councillor Colclough.
Present.
Councillor Hugh Cox.
Present.
Councillor Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Hook.
Present.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Present.
Councillor Dewhurst.
Present, but I'm not on the committee. I'm here to speak to the tree items.
Okay. Councillor Kurzweil.
No, I think
She sent
there's an
her apologies.
apology.
Okay. Councillor McGregor.
Present.
Councillor Nuttall.
Present.
Councillor Nutley.
Present.
Councillor Patch.
Present.
Councillor Parker.
Present.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
Present.
And Councillor Haynes.
Present. Thank you. During today's meeting, there will be public participation to those who have pre-registered to speak. When it comes to the vote, Chris will read out members' names. Would members please say if they are voting for, against or abstaining? I could introduce today's office.
May I be recorded as being present here, but obviously I won't get a vote because I'm not on the committee.
No, I think the position is if you are a substitute, if you've been put in as a substitute, then you act as a normal committee member.
Then that's tickety-boo, if I may do so. Thank you.
Chris, can you clarify that Councillor Gribble was notified as a substitute?
I haven't been told that Councillor Gribble was substituting.
Oh, okay. I wasn't clear. I thought that was what was said.
Then I understand, Chairman. I shall abstain from voting,
yeah,
but I would like to make a presentation.
Just on the Bovey Tracey item.
Yes,
thank
indeed.
you.
Thank you.
Right, the officers present today. We've got Ros Eastman, the business manager, Anna Holloway, Senior Planning Officer, Gary Crawford, Planning Officer, Mark Wadhams, the Senior Arboricultural Officer, Chris Morgan, who's been involved already, the Trainee Democratic Services Officer, and Trish Corner, Democratic Services Officer. Right, moving on then to the start of the meeting. Item 1, apologies for absence. Please, Chris.
Thanks, Chair. That's Councillors Jenks and Councillors Kurzweil.
Thank you. Item 2, minutes of the meeting of the last committee. Those are on pages 3 to 8. Is it your wish that those are signed as a correct record? I've not heard anyone raise objection. So Charles has raised hand, proposed, and sorry, Councillor Nuttall proposed, Councillor Parker, I think, seconded. Okay, can I have a show of hands for sort of agreement with that, please? Yeah, that appears okay. Right, thank you. That's carried. Right, moving on then to item 3 is just in case we need to have that resolution there, but it's not going to be relevant to any items on the agenda today. Item 4, declarations of interest, please. If members could indicate with their blue hand if they have any interest to declare. No? Okay. Item 5, public participation. There are 2 speakers.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I did raise my blue hand for items to declare.
Okay.
As portfolio holder for sport, leisure, recreation, open spaces, etc., I won't be voting on the Dawlish Warren planning application.
Okay, thank you. That interest is then noted. Right, no other hands that I can see raised. So on public participation, there are 2 speakers on the application for Bovey Tracey, and I will invite them at the appropriate time to speak. Item 6 is the applications for consideration. So we could move on then to the first of those, which is Dawlish. And I think that's Gary doing the presentation on that.
I'm going to take this
Okay.
on his
Ros.
behalf, so just give me a moment to share my screen. There we are. If you could just confirm for me that you can see that, please, Chair.
Yeah, can you turn your sound up slightly, please? I can see the picture and it's sounding a bit.
Just
really
check
loud.
I've got my wand in the right place. I'm quite likely
okay.
to have that sticking up in the air.
Thank you.
Is that better?
Yep.
Apologies. Thank you. Let's see if I can get that out of the way. So this is an application for the change of use, essentially, of 2 parking spaces in the car park at the Dawlish Countryside Park for the siting of a concession unit. The location just off the A379 at the entrance to the Countryside Park is shown on this overview plan. And then in more detail, you can see that it's at the far end of the car park within the site. Then we've got a couple of photos here that show that it's close to the access gate, and that also show the screening that is becoming more established, the hedgerow planting, screening, boundary screening along there. And there would be essentially a loss of 2 parking spaces while the concession stand is sited there. This is a proposal that's come about as a consequence of our Southeast Devon European site mitigation strategy work, which members may be familiar is a joint project that is undertaken between us and East Devon and Exeter City Councils, where we work together to make sure that we can mitigate as much of the recreation impact of human activity on the special areas at Dawlish Warren on the estuary. And the partnership executive resolved that this was a good idea to provide a small amount of additional funding. I think it was in July this year. So this application has come to us as a consequence of that. And it's before you today as we considered that overall, it hasn't been called in by members. This is one that I've brought to you as it's on our land, Teambridge's land. And we thought that in this instance, in light of the public interest in the proposal, it merited consideration by committee. But there's nothing particularly unusual or complicated or controversial about the proposal. We have had some concerns raised about management and littering, but again, as a site that's within our control and our ownership, we would hope that those matters would be able to be dealt with. And there are a number of conditions proposed to be applied as are set out in your report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, the ward members, I see Councillor Goodman-Bradbury is the one that's present today, and I know she's had a message from Councillor Wrigley, so I'll hand over to you first of all, please, Councillor Goodman-Bradbury.
Thank you. This is a wonderful resource that we have in Dawlish, the country park on our doorstep, so to speak. There has been quite a bit of interest in this from the public, but also I have a message here, as mentioned, from Councillor Wrigley. He's been in touch with the South East Devon Habitat Regulatory Partnership, and they approve of the idea of the concession, but really only on the basis of a condition of a trial, perhaps for a year. There are also concerns, as Ros mentioned, about litter. And it's my thought that maybe we could think in terms of an alternative to plastic. Is that something we can condition, or something we could ask for the concession holder to be aware of, as this is such a special site from that point of view. And I note also that our town council, Dawlish Town Council, asked for monitoring of litter and the impact, and appreciate that this obviously could be working with the park wardens, but the real problem here is the potential of litter, I think. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll ask Ros to come back on that. I mean, because whilst I understand the points that are being made, we are landowners as an authority, so I'm not sure whether the planning route is the best one to take or not, as far as those particular issues are concerned. It's not down in the recommended conditions, so perhaps Ros would like to comment on that for us, please.
Yes, certainly. In relation to the type of materials that are used by the concession, I think that is something that would be better specified through our lease as landowner with them. And littering conditions are one of those things that we occasionally try to impose on takeaways and other outlets, but they're very difficult to enforce. It's very difficult to know whether or not somebody has brought their coffee to this site from somewhere else and dropped it, or their chocolate bar, has it come from this site or has it come from somewhere else? So it's something that it's very difficult to draft and then follow up on in relation to the tests that we have to comply with for conditions. So we do have sympathy with the concern, but it's something that is very difficult for us to manage. And I think it's for that reason that we have ended up not proposing a condition for this one. There is a supporting statement at 314 in the report. It talks about waste and recycling facilities will be provided, and there have been those concerns considered, but we just don't think that the imposition of a condition is the right way of dealing with this issue on this site, although I understand the concerns that have been raised.
Okay. Can I come back on that just quickly? Can I ask about the idea of a trial with a lease for a year or something like that for the ability for the authority to review the progress of what's happened with the concession?
Well, we can do that as landowner regardless, and it's not a planning issue, I don't think, but again, Ros can guide us on that.
Thank you.
So the proposal that has come to us is for a permanent provision. If there are significant concerns about this on an ongoing basis, then I would suggest that the lease is the most appropriate place for it. The report from the Habitat Regs Exec Committee is quoted in the report at 3.7, where they talk about what is important about fangs, and they also refer to the precedent at Poole, where on the Dorset Heaths, where there is a SANGS that has been established that does have a cafe. It is only a modest facility, and it does, in the report they note that the facility should not compromise the use of the site as a park. But overall, on balance, the committee, as I understand it, did decide that this should be given the go-ahead and should be given the opportunity here. Obviously, as landowner, we have a degree of control, and also as a partner in the Habitat Regs Exec programme, the last thing we want to do is do something that takes away from all the positives that we have at the FANGS. The FANGS is incredibly important to us as part of our strategy of diverting dogs in particular from Dawlish Warren, and giving people somewhere where they can go that isn't the beach, that is an alternative. So if that site becomes less attractive because there's a coffee outlet there, then we would take that outlet away. You know, there's no questions asked. It's our prime concern as an, you know, overriding concern as an organisation, rather than my concern as representing the local planning authority, is to deliver mitigation that works. And if it didn't work, we would stop doing it. You know, it is, I think, for the lease to be carefully constructed to allow that to happen, rather than for planning to try and interfere with that at this stage.
Thank you.
Point made. I just wanted to raise that. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So that's there. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check that we will ensure that the concession is restricted to 2 parking spaces only, and that the entrance to the gateway will not be blocked by materials associated with the concession itself. And the last point I wanted to raise was, has material consideration been given to the potential of increased carbon dioxide production from cars running engines where the weather is inclement and people have purchased coffees to drink? Because I'm going to assume that we're not going to allow tables and chairs to be dotted around the car park for people to sit on, as we see occasionally in Bakers Park from the concession that the lady runs there. And I think for the last and third point, have we done an assessment of what the impact will be on parking as a result of having a concession there? Will that mean that parking spaces are blocked for longer and restrict access to people coming into the park?
Okay, Ros.
So if I take those one at a time, we are only granting permission for 2 parking spaces to be used by the concession. Anything beyond that, you know, incidental de minimis structures on the site would be something that would be controlled by the lease, or be controlled by the landowner. I can't imagine that we would take enforcement action against somebody putting up an A-frame, but it is something that we could consider through other powers that the authority may grant. Likewise, we can't stop people from sitting in their car and bringing a flask of coffee at the moment, and sitting in the cold weather if it's a bit windy with their engines running. I don't think that sort of unregulated emission is something that we have any control over, or that should be a material consideration as part of this application. The site is well located for people to do walk or cycle to if they chose to, although maybe you wouldn't cycle there with your dog. So there are lots of opportunities, but that hasn't been taken into account in this application. And thirdly, we, as I've previously mentioned, we are the operators of this park. It is something that has been taken into account in considering whether or not this is an appropriate proposal, whether or not there is sufficient parking. I have not been given any evidence that suggests that the stationing during the daytime hours of a small-scale coffee concession here would lead to such a problem and a crush of the car parking that it would lead to any antisocial parking problems elsewhere. It's not something that I've got any evidence on.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you. Councillor Nutley.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a great asset for Teambridge. I mean, I often drive out from Ashburton with our dogs and take a lovely walk around the old park. I was just wondering, obviously parking spaces, but is it not at all possible to actually have this unit just inside the gates rather than in actually taking up the parking spaces?
It might be possible, but the decision's been made that this is where Teambridge would like to put it, and this is the application that's come before us. And as the local planning authority, we don't have a problem with this location. So the recommendation from officers is one of approval.
Thank you. Councillor Clarence.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll see I'm holding up my coffee mug now. I'm a bit worried about we're encouraging people to go to this lovely country park and encouraging them to have a cup of coffee. There doesn't seem to be any provision, any toilet provision there. And that's worrying me greatly if we want to see great use of this. Now, I do go to places like Bakers Park, obviously, where there's no toilet provision. I go walk to the Salty Dog Cafe, where the back of the cafe, there is provision for a toilet there in the sort of concession. So it's mixed feelings. So where do you go if you want to go to the toilet? Do you not think we should have put this concession out with advertising it that the concessionaire must provide some form of toilet provision? We'd still be making a profit, nothing against that, but maybe we wouldn't be getting in the extra amount of money because the concessionaire would have to provide toilet provision. I think we should be, if we're going to encourage this park to be a majorly used park, we should have a toilet provision there. That's my thoughts, and I'd be inclined to vote against this at the moment until I knew there was some toilet provision there. Thank you.
Well, I don't think that's a sort of valid planning reason.
I know.
Obviously, there's the landowner issue. I'll ask Ros to comment, please.
So maybe the lack of toilets will discourage people from having a long stay in their car and running their engine while they drink their coffee. I don't know. You know, there are facilities available. I know that most supermarkets don't mind if people use the toilet, so that there is an opportunity there perhaps for people to go to Sainsbury's, and then there are also public toilets available at Dawlish Warren, which isn't especially far away, or in Dawlish Town Centre. I think there are still some public use. So there are opportunities nearby for those who do come here by car. This is supposed to be a suitable alternative natural green space. We are trying to strike the right balance between providing facilities and also providing somewhere that is a simple opportunity for people to walk their dogs. As Councillor Haynes said, I don't think the lack of public facilities here would be a reason to not grant planning permission. And I, from my experience with learning about suitable alternative natural green spaces, the more rustic's not quite the right word, but you know, the more basic the facility, the more likely it is to provide an alternative to dog walkers, rather than being somewhere that people take their families and then you potentially run into the conflict between the various user groups. So keeping it relatively streamlined and straightforward can be seen as a benefit for these particular parks for these purposes. So I don't think that it's a reason to not grant planning permission at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. The principle of having a refreshment facility on this site is obviously, I think, something which the community would welcome. What I am concerned about is the lack of control within the application or the paperwork that specifies what type of unit is going to be located there. And I note under clause 3.8, no detailed information has been provided about the unit. Now, I presume it's going to be a caravan type of unit as opposed to a permanent structure, although it doesn't specify the type of structure that's going to be put in place. But what I wouldn't like to have is an industrial type unit that you see in the forecourts of places like B&Q in the centre of what is a jewel in the crown in terms of the location of the country park. It should be a suitably designed or suitable unit of suitable appearance that would fit within the location. And I think that sort of control should be exerted by the planners through a condition that would or seeks to approve the actual type of unit that is going to be put in place. If we're not careful, we can end up with a second-hand converted caravan that looks like looks a mess, which does detract from the amenity of the area. So I'd like to see that as a condition, that the actual design of the unit must be approved by our planners before it's installed. Thank you.
Thank you. Ros?
What we're granting permission here or what we're recommending is granted permission here is just the change of use of land to allow the stationing of a unit. So it would need to be a temporary and a mobile unit. I don't know who the proposed concessionee is. I don't know if we've gone out to market on that at the moment, but I don't have any particular concern about asking for details of the unit to be submitted to us in advance. As again, we are the landowners and the leaseholders of this site, and I can't imagine that we would be wanting to put a unsuitable unit on the site. But I don't have a problem with just double checking that through the application of an additional condition, if that would enable members to move towards approval of this one.
If that's the case, I'll be very happy to recommend as is with that additional caveat.
So an additional condition about the actual details of the structure or mobile structure to be approved by planning.
Correct.
Okay.
I'd be happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you. Right, so it's been obviously moved the recommendation with that additional condition, and that, who was it seconded it, please? Was that
I did, Chair.
Councillor Nutley, was it?
John, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, so we've got that noted. Thank you. I've got Councillor Parker.
Yes, everyone seems to jump in just before me. Councillor Bullivant, I was going to do the same thing. A great asset, and I think it would be a welcome addition. So I would have proposed it, but I'm certainly in favour of it.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I've got 3 hands still up. Those can all come down, please. You've all spoken. I haven't got anyone else indicating that they wish to speak that's not already spoken from those hands. In which case, what we have then is the recommendation with the addition about the details of the structure of the mobile structure to be agreed have been, as an extra condition, have been moved and seconded. So we'll go to the vote, please. If members can, when their name is called out by Chris, the motion is for permission to be granted with those conditions. So if you could say for, against or abstain, please, when Chris reads your name out. Over to you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
For.
Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Clarence.
Abstain.
Councillor Colclough.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hook.
For.
Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor McGregor.
Abstain.
Councillor Nuttall.
For.
Councillor Nutley.
For.
Councillor Patch.
For.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
For.
And Councillor Haynes.
For.
Thank you, Chair. That's carried in favour.
Okay, thank you. There's nobody against. Thank you. So that's carried. Right, moving on then to the next item, which is Bovey Tracey. That's item 6B. We've got 2 public speakers for this one, Chris, so we need to ensure that they are in the meeting before I continue with this, please. Okay, I can see that the objector is on the screen and the supporter is also there and currently muted. So unless Ros has anything, Anna has anything to say, I'll take the public speakers now. Are you happy for me to do that, Anna?
I think we'd like to just explain the application first, if we can, Chair.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Run you through what we've got.
Yeah, I forgot the order. Sorry, I haven't got it written down here. Okay, so if I'd ask Anna to go through that with us, and then I'll ask the public speakers to speak, and we'll have the objector first and then the supporter. So the objector, if you could mute in the meantime, please, and then I'll come back to you once Anna Holloway has gone through the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just ask Ros Eastman to bring up the actual presentation for me.
Yeah, bear with me. I'm on my way.
Okay, so this is a hybrid planning application for 63 dwellings, including 20 affordable dwellings, which is a policy compliant 30%, and then outline consent for 3 self-build units on the site, which is phase 1 of the allocation BT1 in Bovey Tracey. Here we have the location plan, the area between Monks Way and Morton Hampstead Road and existing dwellings at Bovey. This is the area of the site, which includes phase 1 in the middle, phase 2 to the north, and phase 3 to the south. We should have get the next slide.
going to end the shape and do it this way.
So there it's, we can see the phase 1 in the middle, phase 2 to the north, and then phase 3, which is also known as Bonds Meadow, to the south. The phases 2 and 3, although shown within an illustrative master plan for the site, are not included within this application. So they're only shown illustratively at this point. This application would not grant consent for those developments. The 3 custom builds are at the front of the site, which is, sorry, in the previous one, in the green. The site also includes the existing property at Dean Park, which would be demolished as part of this application. The layout has been designed to retain as many trees as possible on the site, and has been amended in accordance with the comments of the tree officer, although he would want to have seen the retention of the poplars along the north boundary. This is a back corridor through the site, and the applicant has applied to remove those poplars as part of the scheme. However, they are looking at replacement planting through there and the establishment of a new route, and the for the back corridor, which should also include the planting of fruit trees and the replacement of the existing conifers as well. Because of the need to keep this as a dark corridor, the connection to phase 2 is shown as a cycle and pedestrian link rather than a road link through there. We can see in the, here we go, so that is the hedgerow through the middle of that shot is where the back corridor route would be, and then there'd be a pedestrian cycle link through the middle there, which is the dotted purple route. So we have the Southbrook Lane, which is public right of way, which runs along the southern boundary through the site, down onto Monk's Way, and then across to Southbrook Lane. This is an old historical route which connects Atway Farm, which is a listed building to the right of the screen, to Southbrook Farmhouse, which is off to the, yes, where Roz is indicating now. This is at the moment, the existing dwellings do back onto that, so we have back rear garden boundaries there, and really there has been a balance with this case to try and improve that route, retain it as a biodiversity route, and also from a historical point of view to ensure that the dwellings can front onto that and connect onto it, but then it doesn't also detract from that route as well. So the proposals do include some resurfacing, and we'd want to see drainage works as part of it as well. There is an existing pedestrian link through to the houses to the south, which is shown as the dotted purple line. And there's also to the very southern point of the application site, there is shown as a pedestrian and cycle link into phase 3. So that would be the Bonds Meadow site. That is not part of the current application. It is only showing a connection through to that site. And obviously that when that comes forward at a future date, as part of that, we'd expect to see connectivity onto the existing road network there and also to the south as well. I think if we can just move through the next couple of slides, and that shows you the actual application site itself. And we have so this is the actual layout of the proposed development. We have a landscaped area as you come in. And as you come through the site, there is a central landscaped area, which is the retained hedgerow and trees there. And that would also provide the play-based provision. I've discussed that with the tree officer, and subject to the obligations and conditions proposed for the proper maintenance and management of that area, and also to make sure that the relationship between the trees and the play equipment is properly designed. And there's an arboricultural method statement for the provision of that play space. It's considered that could provide a suitable play environment. It's also well located within the site, and there's a secondary area of open space to the north around a mature tree, which is to be retained. That's more of an informal space designed around that tree. So there is obviously provision for various open space on the site. Here we see there is an area, a courtyard parking, and this would include some of the affordable dwellings in here as well. the just where the cursor is now, that is a two-storey building containing 4 flats. So it's not really a block of flats as such, but they are dual-fronted properties. So you have properties facing onto the south and onto the north. So the area onto that courtyard is well overlooked, and there's landscaping proposed, but there's also some overlooking to the south onto the right-of-way. This is just a bit more of the detail of the scheme. If we move through to the next slide, that will show you the location of the affordable dwellings. They're a mix of 1, 2 and 3 bed properties. They'd be rent plus. The custom build plots are policy compliant, so 5%, which is 3 plots on this site, and there are a range of sizes. So there's some flexibility there in terms of what the properties coming forward would be. At this stage, it's only indicative layout within those plots because they are all outline only for now. So this is the Southbrook Lane, this public right of way, and this is showing some of the existing surfacing here. There is a bit of issue with the surfacing and the drainage in this area, which this scheme would hope to address, and so that should improve the route with some work to the hedgerows along there. So to really to make sure that that doesn't become a back alley between two parts of the 2 housing sites. So we really want to make sure that that is an appropriate route, particularly given its historical importance. This is the central play space, and it includes a number of different activities, and also the opportunity for children to interact with the existing natural environment there. So this is the hedge bank and the trees. And there is fencing around that, and access is through from the footpath link there. So this is the northern boundary of the site. So this is between phases 1 and 2, and this shows you the landscaping that's to go in there to replace the existing poplar trees there. So it's really to improve the biodiversity of that, and also to ensure that an appropriate dark corridor is maintained for the bats. We have a few street scenes now. The mix of the properties are render, brick and reconstituted stone. The ones on the entrance to the site are a mix of render and brick, which is more appropriate for the character of the area. We've also had the provision of chimneys within that as well to give that mixed roofscape. We've got some. Go through. I think we've got an image showing the connectivity of this site. So this shows you the blue dotted route is shows you the existing footpath link, and then the routes through the existing housing development, and you can see the school there, and obviously through to the town centre. So this is the existing property at Dean Park. This would be demolished as part of the scheme. The access would be altered. It wouldn't quite be in the same location, but then a lot of the trees on the frontage there between the new access point and the existing edge of Bovey Tracey would be retained as part of the setting and the entrance into the development. So here we can see a view back towards Bovey Tracey, and that is the listed farmhouses on the left-hand side. That's Atway Farm in there. This is the existing public right-of-way. This is Southbrook Lane. So this is showing the relationship it has at the moment. So we would hope that this would be improved as part of the works proposed for this route, so we get better servicing and some works to the landscaping as well. So this is the central part of the site. This is looking obviously towards the national park, and you can see on the other side, you can see the hedgerow, which would be retained running through the site, and also the landscaping, the tree belt alongside Monk's Way through there. This is the most northern part of the application site, and we have the northern tree belt. You can see the conifers and the trees there. On the right hand side, that would be where the new planting will be going in to replace that existing, to retain a back corridor and a vegetated route through there. So this is the phase 2. This is outside the current application site. So this is on the other side of the northern boundary hedge, and it's showing the landscape out towards the national park. This is a more open part of the site, but this isn't part of the current application. It does form part of the BT1 allocation though. And this is looking back towards the application site, you can see the row of poplar trees there, which would be removed, and the new planting would be established along that boundary. And then we just have views of the site from Monk's Way. So here you can see that it's Monk's Way itself is in a cutting, and there's quite a lot of landscaping between the two. There's quite a mature tree belt in there now. And then we have this is the public right of way. It is stepped up from Monk's Way to Southbrook Lane within the application site. And then we have a picture of this is the pedestrian link through to Southbrook Road. And then we also have an image of the southern part of the site, so it's looking south. Okay, that's it. The officer recommendation is for planning permission to be granted, subject to the obligations set out in the committee report. That would also include a monitoring fee for those obligations, and also the conditions set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Right, so I'll take the public speakers next, and if Chris or Trish can correct me, this is a major application, so it's up to 5 minutes that each speaker has, I believe.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you. And a sound should happen at the end of the time to alert you to the time being up. So if I could ask the objector, please, first, it's Richard. You'd unmute and you can begin at your leisure.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm Richard Gray. My wife and I live in a property adjacent to the BT1 site. The purpose of me being on here this morning is to encourage the committee to take account of the objections to this scheme raised by the town council, 80 or 90 local residents, and the National Trust. The National Trust objection is important because they own the site to the south, and they've made it plain that they're not putting any planning application forward at this stage, so that influences Burrington Estates application. I've lived in Bovey Tracey for 30 years. I recognise that well-designed developments can deliver the housing that is needed and help the local economy, but actually this application, in my opinion, is flawed on a number of grounds. I would say the 80 or so objections have been lodged. The vast majority are not anti-development, but they are raising legitimate concerns about particular issues which the applicant has not addressed. Probably the main objections are to do with the local infrastructure, not keeping pace with developments in the town. There are 2 large developments in town. One is completed, one is about halfway through, and you know, they are big developments, about 500 properties between them. But the house centre, the local school, is full capacity, and there's talk about children in Bovey Tracey having to go to other schools outside the town. And the second objection that I raised and a number of others have as well is around BT1 being an important habitat for foraging and roosting bats, particularly in relation to the South Hams SAC. A lot of the routes through BT1 are important flyways, and although at this stage there have been some mitigation things put in place, a lot of it is still conditioned, and that really ought to be part of the detail in the application, in my opinion. There is a bat roost in Dean Park House, and clearly that will be lost when the house is demolished to make way for this development and the access that goes with it. But up to this stage, the applicant has not provided sufficient detail to mitigate any adverse impacts on this protected bat species. A really important issue as part of this, and it's recognised in the report to the committee, is that the applicant has failed to produce a viable master plan for the entire site. The site they wish to develop is a piece in the middle, as the planning officer suggested. There's a piece to the north and the National Trust area to the south. And Barrington Estates have no control or land purchase agreement over either of those areas. And the National Trust have flagged this quite strongly in their objection. The problem is that there is no adequate provision in the application for safe walking and cycling route into town. The route shown just now by the purple dotted line comes up through an existing estate. Part of that route has no pavements. There are then 6 road crossings to get you into town. And if you're going to have another 160 people living on this site, that's a huge number that will be using that route. And it's really quite dangerous. And I think it's inevitable that people will walk out the site onto Morton Hampstead Road, into Mary Street, where for probably 400 metres there is no pavement, and it's single carriageway in places. The lack of a master plan for the whole of BT1 is an important issue, again raised by the National Trust. It means it's not following policy for BT1. Part of that policy was that there should be a master plan, and it's really odd at the moment that access into town from this side actually follows a path to nowhere because it can't get through the National Trust land.
Okay, thank you.
I urge the committee to refuse the application, please.
Thank you. Right, if I could ask the supporter now, please. It's Darren, please, to put your microphone on and then you can speak.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair, members. My name is Darren Summerfield and I'm a consultant with LRM Planning, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the applicant, Barrington Estates. Barrington Estates are an award-winning Devon-based developer with an established reputation for building imaginative and high-quality homes. The company pride themselves on exceptional standards of construction and the satisfaction of their customers. They have recently been accredited the highest rating of 5 stars by the Home Builders Federation Satisfaction Survey. Whilst involved in developments across Devon and the Southwest, Barrington Estates do not use standard house types that are rolled out regardless of the location. Every one of their schemes is specifically designed to reflect the local character and utilises a range of materials and details that are appropriate to the area. You will not see the same houses proposed here on another scheme in any other part of the county. As members will be aware from their site inspection in February, technically this is a complicated site. Topography, trees, ecology, heritage, drainage, landscape impact, access and connectivity have all been considered in detail. As is the case with many developments, there have been areas where compromise has been required, and this is something that the committee will of course be familiar with from their consideration of other schemes. The officer has provided you with a very thorough overview of the key considerations. Given the reasons that the application was called to committee by Councillor Kurzweil, I would though like to provide a brief summary of how those issues have been addressed in the application. Firstly, the Highway Authority do not object to the proposal on grounds of vehicle or pedestrian safety or traffic generation. There will be connections provided for cyclists and pedestrians to both the existing network and other phases of the allocation. The applicant has also agreed to make the improvements requested to Southbrook Lane. The site has a number of significant trees to the boundaries and within, and the applicant has worked with officers to strike a balance between the retention of those trees and developing a site that will result in an attractive and safe environment while making efficient use of the available land. This is detailed in the officer's report, which confirms that an appropriate balance has been struck. The application has also considered heritage issues, and these matters have been subject of extensive discussions. The scheme has been revised to ensure that it appropriately respects the heritage assets in accordance with the requests of officers. As you'll be aware, this site is allocated for new homes. This is not a speculative proposal. The applicant is following the adopted local plans guidance and is working with the plan-led system. Whilst a challenging site, the council were of course aware of this when they decided to allocate it. The technical issues will have been thoroughly assessed, and it would have been clear at the time that there would be a need for compromise for this site to come forward. A mix of housing types and sizes will be provided, including affordable homes, accessible dwellings and self-built plots. This site is included in the council's 5-year housing land supply. Contributions have been agreed towards school transport and travel vouchers, and the council have calculated the SIL liability for the site exceeds £1 million. This can be used to support the delivery and improvement of infrastructure in the area, including schools, highways, public transport. Green infrastructure has been fully considered, and this proposal will secure improvements to bat flyways, and it does include a replacement bat roost, so that's a specific part of the proposal. The biodiversity related elements of the scheme have been thoroughly considered by the council's ecologist and Natural England and approved by both. Whilst the site does not include any employment development, the proposal will of course support employment during construction, and it's recognised that new development provides further indirect economic benefits. In terms of sustainability, the proposal currently provides for a fabric-first approach. This will deliver a 36% CO2 reduction by means of improved insulation and minimal thermal bridging. The advantage of this, of course, is that it stays with the building for the duration of its life. Renewable technologies are advancing all of the time, and Burrington Estates are committed to exceeding the 42% requirement by the addition of PV panels or heat pump technology, along with EV charging points. The overdue update on the building regulations will help to inform which technology is most appropriate to be used. In conclusion, the applicant and the project team have worked very hard with the council to revise and finalise this scheme. Despite the constraints, we've presented a proposal that will deliver high quality homes and an attractive place for people to live. The proposal accords with the council's policy, which allocates the site for residential development, and the officer's report is clear in its recommendation. Burrington Estates are ready to commence construction at the soonest opportunity and to support the continued delivery of new homes in Teignbridge, and we respectfully request that members support the recommendation and grant planning permission this morning. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Okay, I'll ask Councillor Gribble in a moment to speak as the local ward member. Members will note that the supporter made reference to the site inspection. There was a site inspection back on the 27th of February, obviously a while ago now, but before lockdown. So we did go on site. If I could just remind the members, it's on, I think it's about page 48, 49. Apart from myself, there was Councillor Hugh Cox, Councillor Bradford, and also present, those that are in the meeting today, Councillor Patch and Nutley. So if those members particularly wish to come in and say things after Councillor Gribble, then I'll just remind you of that. Okay, Councillor Gribble, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think the resident raises valid and serious concerns, but personally, I agree entirely with Bovey Tracey Town Council views concerning highway safety. Concerns are around access to phase 1 from Monk's Way, turning across the traffic on the A382 and already a narrow section of road. In addition, the generation of increased traffic along Mary Street is very narrow with very few passing places. Private highways, concerns are expressed over the amount of private highways proposed, i.e. non-county council adopted, and the number of houses served from them requiring residents to take their refuse to and from the highway for collection. The inadequate infrastructure has already been emphasised, but the planning statement makes reference to the surgery, makes a reference to available facilities such as banks. There are none in Bovey Tracey. A primary school and doctor's surgery have for many years been already at capacity. Public transport, there is a lack of public transport serving this particular area of the parish, and the loss of trees, of course, concerns raised over the amount of trees affected either being pruned or removed, and the effect on listed building the development will have on a negative impact on the neighbouring listing buildings, namely the Atway Cottage and the Atway Cottages and the Atway Farm. Affordable housing. The application refers to a target of 30% to be delivered. Councillors are concerned in Bovey Tracey that this is the only target and may well not be achieved. I think if minded to approve, rigorous conditions should be imposed protecting the remaining trees, etc. on site, and to ensure the delivery of affordable housing so that local people may be able to continue to live in the town. And of course, to ensure that the local infrastructure is improved and increased to accommodate the existing and ever-growing population needs. I think the speed of traffic joining Bovey Tracey from the Morton Hampstead Road on the A382 is in excess of that required. Barrington Estates have respected history, and I thank them for the presentation, but I would ask that they take notice of the needs and requirements of the local people. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, I've got Councillor Nutley indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. As you say, a long time ago, since, well, 9 months ago now, isn't it? Yeah, so I've got a lot of concerns about this development, and we've heard about the BT1. I mean, would we have accepted BT1 as a development site now, with consider the impact in environment, landscape, as referred to as far back as 10 years ago in the 2010 inspector's report? In those 10 years, the wildlife has flourished even more so, and the flood risk has increased significantly. Whereas affordable element is positive, there are a huge number of mitigation elements that must be put in place by the developer. We do, as a planning authority, have the resources, or do we have the resources to monitor and enforce these mitigations and conditions effectively? Will those mitigations offset the damage that will undoubtedly be inflicted on the environmental and ecology? Will the mitigations affect the results downstream, where Bovey Tracey already experiences significant flooding? There are significant holes in the current report. The issues of bat flights and foraging land for bats is not addressed adequately, nor is the issue of more potential flooding downstream. The impact on the national park has been glossed over, and there has been no discussion with the National Trust or consideration of the impact on the ecology on the adjacent piece of land. There will be significant tree loss at the time when we are seeing ash dieback and the loss of trees habitats across the countryside. The National Health have already objected due to the severe lack of capacity. On page 26, which I feel very concerning, under open spaces, the play area is located below trees. I had the unfortunate, I lost my father through being killed by a tree when I was 6 days old. And I would not want to see children that. This is, as it states in there, this is not an appropriate, because you cannot have this type of play equipment with such a location. The play areas on the whole of the located within the close to the trees and root protection zone. While it is nice to enhance and make the most of the site's features, play areas need their independent play activity area and green buffer zones. I mean, we could go on with Grazab. I feel that is totally in the appropriate place to be in on that. I mean, when you read the representations I mean, on 9, there has not been a comprehensive bat survey. Moving on to 10. Without a full ecology assessment, a bespoke greater horseshoe bat mitigation plan for the entire allocation, mitigation measures in a combination impacts on insufficient and comply with policy BT1. No foraging area is proposed for greater horseshoe bats. On 14, concerns regarding impact on wildlife, including protected and priority species on site and the loss of habitats. It will not achieve the net gain in biodiversity. In number 33, loss of trees and the existing trees should not be felled, which I totally agree with, before new trees have been matured. Moving on to on number 62, the planning permission for development on this land has been refused, especially twice on this occasion. The affordable element, although like Councillor Gribble was saying, 30%, and the councils, Bovey Tracey Council, obviously are very concerned that will not be achieved. I feel that, to me, this application, as I say, I could not support it on the present state, and I feel that I think we need to listen to other members for their views as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I see that other members that are on site have indicated now, so I'll go through those and then I'll come in myself at the end. Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. I won't run through the great many sort of items that have been raised as concerns. I do thank the local resident, Councillor Gribble and Councillor Nutley, for their very, very eloquent setting out of the various reasons. Having attended a site visit, I did make a sort of note at the time that it is a very wildlife rich area. It's a very good habitat for all kinds of foraging sort of mammals, as in addition to the bats. I am sort of concerned about sort of any sort of this sort of suitability of any mitigation measures. I think that there are, although I'm not going to list all of the objections that have been put forward, I just highlight a couple that I do find quite sort of concerning. Firstly, the infrastructure issue, the fact that the school and the health centre is oversubscribed, the extent to which it does meet the needs of local people, this application. I'm not sure whether there has been a local needs assessment. There's been lots of development in the area already. But the access issue, again, the issue raised by the National Trust regarding access and safe routes into town, I just feel that there's a lot here that is just too concerning for me to be minded to approve this. I just making note also, I think there are 3 ward members in this ward. I do thank Councillor Gribble for coming and giving his views and sort of representing those of the town council. It would have been nice to have had a steer from the other sort of ward members on this.
Can I just interrupt you at that point and explain that the other 2 ward members have actually got an interest, and I know one of them couldn't be here today anyway, it would appear. So it's not that they're not interested in coming, but they're actually unable to, is my understanding.
Okay, I understand that interest can prevent voting. I'm not sure that they prevent speaking on a matter. But no, that's it really. I'm not going to sort of run through the list of objections, but I do find it sort of like significantly concerning, really, that the list of issues here that haven't actually been addressed.
Thank you. Councillor Bradford.
Thank you. I did go on the site visit, and I've got a lot of concerns about this application. The access is really difficult. In fact, I would say quite dangerous. There's no pavement. I don't know what the bats are meant to do while the trees are taken down before the other ones are established. And I think demolishing Dean Park is I think it's a travesty. And there's even a bat roost in there. I know that it's a fact that the children in Bovey Tracey, several of them have had to go to other schools outside of the town. It's just not right that there should be some more houses built, and the infrastructure isn't there. Mainly, a lot of the wildlife, you know, the bats, the badgers, dormice, it's just such a wonderful place for wildlife, and I feel really sorry that they should be destroyed. So I do have loads and loads of concerns about this.
Thank you. Councillor Cox.
Sorry, getting unmuted. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat everything. It's just I find this quite a surprising application. You can go through it and pick so many holes in it. You could sit here for half an hour doing it. I think the main thing is wildlife, trees, flooding, access into town. As the previous speakers have all said, I'm quite surprised, to be honest, that this was ever considered as a suitable for development in the past. But in its present form, I can't see that it needs too much work doing on it personally to get over all the issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I was the other member that went on site back in February, coming at it from the perspective that it is an allocation in the local plan, then clearly I was looking out for any specific things on the site visit that would make me concerned that reasons why it couldn't go ahead in the form that it was being proposed, because there's the principle that it's actually for development having been allocated, and I couldn't see any reasons on site as to why what was being proposed wouldn't be acceptable. I think on the slides we saw the footpath link at the southern end of the site that would take pedestrians through and cyclists through to the side road network, taking them into town rather than going along the main, or the local main road that provides the access into the site. Having heard the issue about the land at the south, I think it's phase 3, sort of that not coming forward, there would still be access through along the minor roads that would give access, albeit there would have to be crossing, as the public speaker, the objector, said. So I wasn't concerned about that aspect of it. Having driven there and looked at the highway from which the access to the estate would come, and also from Monk's Way, I again didn't have any concerns from the site inspection that I undertook. As far as the issues that have been raised also already about the schools, about the wildlife and so on, I think these points are all answered in the report. I mean, as far as the school's concerned, it's the SIL money that will be used to increase the schools. Devon County have obviously got their comment in the text. As far as the wildlife is concerned, we have the views of our own wildlife staff plus Natural England. When Councillor Nutley was going through the list, he was reading the list of objections rather than what had been put in by people who are consultants or professional staff. So there were a number of points there which were just sort of personal views, which wouldn't necessarily stand up. I recognise that there are concerns about the wildlife, and it is a wildlife-rich area, but it is an area that has been allocated in the local plan. So that would be something that I would have to accept. As far as the health centre is concerned, and the points in the report, it does give a response to the NHS request for a contribution and where such would be appropriate. But there are other funding streams based on population and so on. So that isn't necessarily the sort of thing that this has to provide for, because at the local plan stage, that wasn't something that was included then, and there is the national funding. So from my point of view, the site, I couldn't see anything on site that would raise concerns for the development before us not happening, and I feel that all the objections have been answered in the text. So that's the position I have. I'll ask Anna perhaps to come in and actually give a specific detail on some of those points that have been raised already, such as the education, highways, wildlife and so on, if there are any points that she wishes to make in addition to what I've just said. So Anna, would you like to, please?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to also say that we've had 3 further late objections to this, but they don't raise anything additional to the points already addressed in the report. In terms of the education, I think it's already been stated that this scheme would provide towards the SIL contribution, which is then used for school funding. The county have asked for a contribution towards bus school transport, which the applicant has agreed to pay. So there would be a contribution towards providing that school transport, but in terms of education provision, that is something that's covered by SIL, and therefore would need to come out of the SIL contribution made. In terms of highways, the county highways have looked at this and in terms of the traffic generation and the access, and haven't raised any concerns with the safety of those or the traffic generated from this development. With the wildlife, there's been an appropriate assessment undertaken on this site. There's a proposal for a bat roost to be provided, and also in terms of the northern boundary, there is a phasing with the planting scheme there to ensure that there is a continuous route for bats migrating through that area. Part of the planting there includes fruit trees, and to try to increase the diversity of the vegetation on site and increase the insect numbers, which then provide bats feeding opportunity. In terms of dormice and other licensing, Natural England obviously would need to be, there is the licensing process to go through separate to planning, which also affect the replacement bat roost. I think that was all the points, unless I've missed anything, Chair.
Okay, well, if there is anything, we can come back. I've got Councillor Hook next, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to raise some concerns and ask some quick questions as I go along. So I'll ask the questions and maybe leave it to the end to answer them. Firstly, the issue of the comprehensive master plan. So I just wanted to, obviously there isn't one. So I wanted to ask, that doesn't conform with policy BT1, why that hasn't happened, because just because there's different landowners doesn't mean that's not possible. And as I understand it, our policy is if the developer isn't bringing forward the master plan, then it would be us as the council that would do it. So that was one of the questions. On carbon reduction, the report tells us that the development does not conform to policy S7. I've read the what they call the energy and sustainability statement, and they admit as well that it doesn't, and refer to our policy as merely guidance. It's not guidance, it's a policy, and we require applicants to abide by it, although I do accept obviously that this application came in before our tightening up of our carbon calculator, but nevertheless we do have and did have a carbon calculator which they should be conforming with. And I hear what the applicant said in terms of, we don't know what current technology is, etc., etc. We don't know what it is going forward, but we do know what it is now, and so I would personally be asking for a deferral to get that detail bottomed out. It's a bit questionable that this application has been around for so long. And that statement itself was January, and we haven't got to a point where we've got a bit more detail, and that policy S7 is conformed with. Electric vehicle charging, we do have a policy that would require electric vehicle charging anyway, so that's policy S9 of our local plan, does require that to be part of the application, irrespective of its contribution to carbon reduction, as I understand it, so that's another query. So that's about understanding in condition 24 of the application. So it is referred to in condition 24, but that wording isn't very clear as to whether electric vehicle charging will be required. So just want that wording explained. And then the whole issue of sustainable travel provision. So I can see the footpath going through into what I think is Southbrook Lane. I sort of vaguely know that route through. It's a bit up and down in terms of walking or cycling. And also I presume that little footway link would not be a cycleway because it would be considered too narrow. So that doesn't allow for cycling to go through. So cycling provision is essentially nil. I mean, you're either going on a road that has, you know, we've already said is a bit up and down, single carriageway, got lots of parked cars, etc., or else you're out onto the main Monk's Way, again with no provision at all. So I don't see any cycle provision here at all. There's public transport, again, you know, I'm not wondering why there isn't a contribution required to public transport. I'm just a query, I don't know how good the bus service is, but doesn't seem to be too much consideration of it. Then there's the speed limit on Morton Hampstead Road, which is a 60 mile/h speed limit. I'm wondering whether, I know in previous applications we've asked the applicant to fund a TPO, not a TPO, to reduce the speed limit or do works on a road. And I'm wondering why we are not asking for Section 106 contributions for sustainable travel. Not all of it needs to come from SIL, as I understand. If it's required to make the application or development acceptable, then we can ask for it from Section 106. And certainly when it comes to cycle provision, if we're going to make it acceptable from that point of view, I don't know why we're not asking for it from Section 106. Then the one other people have mentioned also I'm concerned about is the recreation play areas. And the fact they're under trees, and if it requires more space to be allocated for play areas, well then that I would have thought is what should happen. And also a query on whether all the percentages are being abided by in terms of percentage space for different age groups, and also space for active recreation, whether all the required percentages are being abided by in this application, I'm not sure. And then lastly, the reconstituted stone sounded a bit nasty, but I have no idea. Reconstituted stone might look very nice, but that was the query. Why we're not insisting in design terms on granite, limestone, and genuine use of stone, and what the carbon impact of reconstituted stone is, as opposed to natural stone. So a whole range of issues I'm concerned about. My gut reaction would be to be asking for a deferral on some of those more important ones like carbon reduction, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask Anna to come in a minute. On your last point, I would have thought that quarrying limestone and granite would be far more carbon intensive than reconstituting what essentially would be seen as sort of more waste and easily accessible material. Anna, would you like to come back on those range of points, please?
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the carbon reduction, I think we heard from the applicant's representative today that they are basing it on a fabric first approach, but they do also intend to include renewables and EV charging points. The proposed condition would be worded so that they do need to meet the policy compliant level, and we would expect to see details of the renewables and of the charging points coming forward as part of the scheme. In terms of the reconstituted stone, I have to say that I don't know the difference in the carbon footprint between the reconstituted stone to quarrying of stone, but I think you're probably correct that there is there'll be a carbon requirement for the quarrying of it. We would require them to submit samples of the materials proposed as part of the application, and that is something that's a fairly standard condition, and we would expect to see for this scheme. So in terms of the bus services, the SIL was based on the provision of bus services as part of the SIL contribution. So that when you're looking at what obligations are requested, we need to make sure that we don't end up with requiring something which is covered by a different form of contribution, such as the sill. So you need to make sure that we don't do something called double dipping when you're asking something twice. So for that reason, it wasn't seen as being appropriate to also have an obligation for a contribution towards bus services in this instance. So in terms of the play area under the trees, the design of that is conditioned, and there will be obligations on there to ensure that it is maintained appropriately and that you get the acceptable, the relationship between the play equipment and the trees is acceptable for both the trees' long-term health and also the safety of the children using that space. So the master plan, there is a requirement in the policy for a master plan. Within our, we don't consider this to be, for master planning purposes, we don't consider this to be a strategic site whereby the council would produce the master plan. The applicant has provided an illustrative master plan to show how the schemes to the north and south of the site could be brought forward on the basis of the grounds of prematurity for this application. For the lack of an adopted master plan, it'd be very hard to justify that at appeal because with the site the layout it is, it's hard to see how you would develop this site differently and provide different levels of connection into the sites the north and the south, given the needs of the back commuting corridor. I think something else was the flooding off-site. The Devon County, as the lead local flood authority, have reviewed this, and they are now happy with the scheme and with the runoff rates of the proposal. I think Ros might want to come in with a bit more detail on the master plan point.
Okay, Ros, please.
Thanks, Anna. I think you probably said everything I was going to say on the master plan point. I was just going to briefly remind members that we had similar considerations and concerns at Whitehill, so NA2, and also to an extent at NA3 as well. And the inspectorate considered that both of those schemes could proceed with the level of information that was submitted as part of the application without having a formally adopted master plan, and NA3 obviously is substantially larger. And I don't think that is one of the matters that is at issue at the moment. So the absence of a master plan we don't consider in this instance is a reason to not grant planning permission. The other point that was mentioned by Councillor Hook, I think, was about the cycle links and the extent to which that route was going to be adequate or otherwise. I think on the whole, if I can just share my screen, we, in principle, through residential areas, we expect cycle routes to be sharing their routes with low traffic routes, and that's the case across most of our allocations. We don't always expect there to be an off-road route. So whilst it is true to say that this short section here of existing footpath is not at cycle route width, I would have thought that that was a wheelable length of route. So you could cycle to that point and then you can cycle from that point on road to get to the town centre and the school, if that is the choice that people make. So again, the fact that there isn't a dedicated off-road cycle route here for a scheme of this nature, I don't think would be something that would be a sustainable concern to raise. And I think the other point that was raised was whether or not we had sufficient play space and how that was being addressed through conditions and obligations. If you could pick that one up.
So in terms of the amounts of the open space and the play space, then that would comply with the policy. So we have 1,700 square metres of natural play area located essentially within the scheme, and approximately 5,500 square metres of additional green infrastructure, including the additional area of open space, the green space adjacent to the access off Morton Hampstead Road, and the wildlife corridors along the northern and western boundaries. So apart from the one-bed flats, all the dwelling houses benefit from private outdoor space, and so there is a range of spaces proposed within the scheme. There is a balance needed between the different requirements, and we do have a scheme which I know there's been comments about the fact of saying a target of 30% affordable dwellings. Well, this scheme is delivered. It is a full application for that part of the scheme, and it is providing the required amount that forms part of the application. Sometimes you need to balance out all those different requirements. The form and the layout of the open space and the green infrastructure here is considered appropriate when taking into account all of the different criteria for this development to meet. And it would be providing a policy compliant level of affordable housing and obviously the custom built plots as well. So this is an allocated site in the local plan, and we do need to remember that is the principle of providing housing on this land, is therefore forms part of our adopted local plan, and that is the basis for any planning application to be determined. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McGregor.
Thank you, Chair. I note on condition 12 that it says development should be carried out in accordance with the approved plans and documents. In terms of, this is quite a regular position for me to kind of mention, is that if this plan is approved, that we're not going to see a series of condition variation requests that will then reduce what was approved at the time of the application being approved to something completely different. And I'm looking for assurance that the conditions that have been set are achievable right now and can be met. And if we can't get the guarantee that they are achievable right now, then like Councillor Hook, I would suggest a deferment until we get a set of conditions that can be delivered as they are approved.
I think what you're asking is pretty much impossible, because any applicant can come back and sort of put an application in for a change in the conditions. So Ros, do you want to respond to that one, please?
I was simply going to say that we have discussed the conditions with the applicant team. They are aware of the conditions that we're suggesting should be imposed, and the details that we are requesting and do want to continue to control. But you're right. It's a bit Rumsfeldian, isn't it? But we don't know what we don't know. And there may be circumstances downstream why the developer needs to come back to us and request an alteration. But that process is one that we follow diligently and using our professional skills, knowledge and judgment, and the one that is open to public participation. So unless it's a non-material amendment, an absolutely minor de minimis amendment that doesn't affect the quality of the scheme, there will be public consultation on those changes, and there is an application process there that we have to follow. But there may be legitimate circumstances why changes are needed, and we don't at the moment know what those might be. Likewise with the 106 requirements, we absolutely consider at the moment everything that is in that package, in the proposal, is deliverable and achievable. We have no reason to disbelieve that. That's part of the reason why Anna noted earlier that we will be seeking a monitoring contribution as well, to make sure that we are able to keep on top of the 106 obligations and to ensure that the delivery happens as we think it should. But we are not soothsayers, we are not fortune tellers, and can't see what's going to come downstream. But at the moment we have commitment and agreement from the developer that this list of conditions and obligations as before you in the recommendation is acceptable to them, and from our perspective we consider that it delivers the necessary mitigation to make this policy compliant scheme deliverable with the benefits that would accrue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, I have no other people indicated they wish to speak. Councillor Patch's hand's gone up now, and Councillor Hook, so I'll bring you both in then. Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to come back on one point, the issue of infrastructure and SIL money. I mean, it strikes me that children cannot be pointed towards a figure on a balance sheet for SIL money received as an alternative to attending a local school. nor can elderly people be pointed towards a figure on a balance sheet as an alternative to be able to register and attend a local health centre. And particularly the last issue, a local health centre, is something that would affect my residents in my ward as well, as they would sort of be likely to use the Bovey Tracey Health Centre. I'm not sure about how this issue is addressed of a lack of infrastructure, and money sitting in a sealed bank account doesn't provide that infrastructure. And I'm not sure what mechanism there is for ensuring that these services can be provided to allow those services to be provided for new residents in an area.
Well, this is the system that the government has given us. It's the civil system. So that's how developers pay their contribution. And then the various bodies responsible for providing those pieces of infrastructure are required to do it with the use of that money or other monies they may also receive from central government. So I can't see it as in any way a planning reason for an individual application that we can sort of bring it in as part of the argument. I'll ask Ros if she wants to respond to that, please.
Just to add that I don't think we've had a representation from the health centre or anybody representing the local primary care to suggest that there is any particular difficulty. The representation that we've had from the NHS is from Torbay Hospital, and I think the two need to be distinguished as part of the consideration here. But yes, in relation to education contributions, the Capital Review Group, part of our local, our infrastructure delivery planning processes, does make decisions about where and when money is directed towards individual projects, and that is undertaken in partnership with Devon County Council. We have funded new school provision at King Stainton through SIL, and are also putting money into the pot at South West Exeter. So if there is a need and a request is made and there is a project, then there is the potential through the infrastructure delivery planning process for that to be sought. It's also worth noting that both the surgery and other partners were obviously consulted during the preparation of the local plan. So their specific local needs and requirements that were made known to us at that point in time would have been included and reflected in the plan. In this instance, as far as I'm aware, there is no specific request, and we cannot seek contributions where they are going into a bottomless pot from Section 106. We have to have a costed, funded, identified project that would deliver the necessary mitigation just for this development as well. So we can't, much like with flooding, we can't ask this development to make good an existing problem downstream. Same with healthcare. We can't ask this development to make good an existing problem if there is one at the surgery. And I know that historically there was funding delivered by the Bradley Benz scheme, I think, for additional healthcare provision in Bovey Tracey. And so it can and does happen through the planning system, but that request hasn't been made in this instance, and therefore we cannot not grant planning permission because of the absence of infrastructure that hasn't been evidenced to be required.
Thank you. Councillor Hook.
Thank you. Just to come back to a couple of points. So on the carbon reduction, according to our policy, it shouldn't be conditioned. So policy EN3 says major developments will be required to produce a carbon reduction plan to indicate how this could be achieved, this being policy S7 and the 42% reduction. So it's not something that should be conditioned. The plan should have been produced, and they should be showing how that's going to be achieved. So I think we are in our rights to ask for a deferral and ask how the carbon reduction will look, partly because whatever is proposed could have an effect on how the site is laid out or how the site appears or its design appearance. So that's part of the reason I would have thought why you would want to know upfront how it's going to happen. I just wanted to double check as well the wording on condition 24. I think it would be worthwhile separating out the electric vehicle charging, because that is a separate requirement which comes from S9 of the local plan, and so that should be in there as a separate requirement for it to be shown. If sometimes there are physical differences in the way a site's laid out because of EV charging. So I think we'd want to see how that's going to happen across the site. And just to refer back as well to policy S9, you know, it's a subjective thing, isn't it? How much you've provided for walking and cycling and public transport. So I can see a link through to an existing housing estate, and it's a route to walk to, for example, the school. It's not really a route to walk to some other places, and so one could argue, how much has walking been promoted, or how much has cycling been promoted? It's not really being promoted. It's linking through to an existing route, which takes you to some destinations, but not all of them. Cycling, there is, as I can see, no provision whatsoever. I don't accept having to walk your bike for a certain distance is cycling provision. That's not cycling provision. So I don't see any provision for cycling. So we could argue that it doesn't conform to policy S9, because policy S9 point B says provide and link to strengthened and improved public transport, cycling and walking networks. And I don't see it linking to anything that's been improved. It's linking to something that's existing. And those future links are unknown. They may never happen. And we've experienced before at Hill Park, where you can do a phase of a development and leave people walking along a main road. This won't happen, I accept, in this situation. But you know, we should have learned those lessons about, you know, doing phases of developments before others and leaving people at a disadvantage and discouraged from using sustainable travel when that is exactly what we should be doing. So my feeling is we should be asking for a deferral to know exactly what the carbon reduction measures are. And also on the sustainable travel, I'd like to see more. I mean, that's difficult to demarcate exactly what more is, but I don't feel there has been any improvement specifically to the cycling network at all.
Ross, did you want to comment on that deferment, or is the condition going to be okay?
So from my perspective, I have sympathy with what Councillor Hook is saying about it would be good to have the details up front on the carbon reduction side of things. But in this instance, there's no doubt from the developer that they are content and happy to target or to achieve the 42% reduction. They just have been slightly hanging fire to see whether or not there was a requirement going to be introduced for air source heat pumps or X, Y, and Z alternative technology. So we have a plan that demonstrates that they can achieve a significant proportion of the necessary carbon reduction, but then there's a bit more that will come in subsequent downstream detail. As far as I'm concerned, that's a pre-commencement condition, and we would expect those details before a spade was put in the ground, in effect. And I would not have thought that there would be a need on this site with the topography and the arrangement of the site for any major substantive changes to the way the site is laid out for them to achieve that detail. And so I don't consider that carbon reduction is a reason for a deferral. Neither do I think that the sustainable travel that we have as part of the application, which includes the travel vouchers, which are cycle or bus vouchers, and includes the non-Mary Street safe routes into the town centre, which seems a reasonable place to be trying to get people to for their onward travel to destinations or elsewhere, or to carry out their day-to-day needs in the town centre. I think that what we've got here represents an appropriate balance for an allocated site. So I don't see that there's any need for deferral at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bullivant.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just confirm with the officers, please? This site is a consented site within a local plan. Therefore, the principle of development on this site is already agreed. That the officers believe that the spirit and intent of the policies laid down by Teambridge are met through the conditions that they've sought to apply on this site, and that all of our statutory consultees have passed all their comments in favour of approval on this site, and that the policy that we have for 3 monthly site meetings as part of the enforcement procedures for sites with over 50 homes will enable local councillors to visit site every 3 months to make sure that the conditions as written are being applied appropriately, and that they still recommend that this approval is given for this site. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna, did you want to come in, or was it Ross?
In short, I think the answer to all of those was yes. I know that there have been a couple of reservations from a couple of our consultees, and I think that the town council probably count as one of our, or do count as one of our statutory consultees. But in our view, the site represents the best balance of development that we can achieve at this time for this site. And yes, it would be caught by our enforcement policy because it's more than 50.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hook, I'll let you come back again.
Just one remaining thing was the separating out of the electric vehicle charging as a separate condition, separate from the carbon reduction, because they fall under different policies. And just to say that some of our internal officers weren't altogether happy with all parts of this application in terms of their comments.
Thank you. Ros, the separation of the two conditions.
Absolutely, I agree. That would help with clarity. That's not a problem. And members will note that the recommendation specifically says number and form of conditions to essentially suit how they come out when we draft them, to make sure that they are adequately clear and precise. So I think that would be one positive that we could do. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, nobody's moved anything yet, so in the absence of that, I will move recommendation as set out with that slight addition of the electric vehicles that Councillor Hook just said. So I'd move the recommendation for approval as set out. Would anyone like to second that, please?
I'll second that.
Right, thank you. So it was Councillor Parker was the first one that I saw, so that's it's been seconded. Right, can we go to the vote then, please? So the motion is for approval as set out with that electric vehicle addition. So when Chris reads your name, you'll either say for, against or abstain, please. Okay, Chris.
Councillor Bradford.
For the environment, against.
Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Clarence.
For.
Councillor Colclough.
For.
Councillor Cox.
Against.
Councillor Hayes.
I'll abstain on this one.
Councillor Hook.
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor McGregor.
Abstain.
Councillor Nuttall.
Against.
Councillor Nutley.
Against.
Councillor Patch.
Against.
Councillor Parker.
For.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
Abstain.
And Councillor Haynes.
For.
Okay. We'll just get the numbers on that. Chair, that's 6 for, 6 against, and 3 abstentions. So it's your casting vote.
Yes, that's what I had recorded as the vote. So I'll use my casting vote in the same way as my original vote, and that will be for, in which case approval is granted. Thank you. I think at that point, members may wish to have a comfort.
So have you voted twice then, Mike? In that case?
I used a casting vote as I am entitled to do, and I voted in favour the same way as my original vote. So in which case the vote is carried by the casting vote and approval is given. Right, I think members would probably want a comfort break before we carry on. That's the usual request. So can we have just a few minutes? I'll make it 16 minutes past. We'll need, can I just check with Chris, we'll need to re-register again, won't we?
Yes, Chair, there'll be another roll call once everyone returns.
There'll be another roll call. So shall we say 25 past then, to allow members time to have a comfort break and then come back, because we've still got the 2 tree applications and we'll have to go through that process again. So do you want us to actually log off now, Chris, to come back?
If you can just put your cameras on, put your cameras off, and then mute your microphones, that'll be
Okay,
sufficient.
right. So we do that. So cameras and microphones off, please, and then be back for 25 past.
Thank you, Chairman.
I should be leaving at this stage, Chairman.
Okay. Chris, I'll make it 25 past. So we're going to get the proper screen back, please. Thank you.
Mike, before you start again, I seem to have got a picture of my table in front of me instead of, how do I get that back? Do you know?
Chris, can you sorry, Councillor Clarence, can you click the arrow next to the stop video button, see if you can change your camera that you're using?
The arrow next to it.
Are you using your issued little
Yes.
computer, Chris?
Yes,
Top
I'm.
left-hand corner, you've got a little round circle which says switch camera. Top left-hand corner, can you see a little roundel which got a picture of a icon of a camera with two little circles? Just touch that. It switches the view from your lens.
That's it,
Thank
Chris,
you very
we got
much. Sorry about that. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Right. I think it's after the time I indicated. So, Chris, if you could go through the roll call now, please, if members could indicate that they're present, please.
Councillor Bradford.
Present.
Councillor Bullivant.
Present.
Councillor Clarence.
Present.
Councillor Colclough.
Present.
Councillor H. Cox.
Present.
Councillor Hayes.
Present.
Councillor Hook.
Present.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Present.
Councillor McGregor.
Present.
Councillor Nuttall.
Present.
Councillor Nutley.
Present.
Councillor Patch.
Present.
Councillor Parker, I think he gave his. Apologies.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
Present.
And Councillor Haynes.
Present.
Thank you.
Right, so we're moving on now to item 7A first for the tree preservation order. As it happens, they're both in Ipplepen, but it's the first one, which is E2/15/21. So I'll introduce Mark Wadhams, who will take us through this. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much. So this report concerns the confirmation or otherwise of the District of Teakinbridge Dornerfield Lane Tree Preservation Order 2020, which protects a group of 9 beech trees located on or close to the southeastern boundary of a property known as Dawlish. And if I can just share my screen. So this is the plan showing the location of the group of trees. These are the trees here looking east. So these are the mature beech trees. This is it from Dornerfield Lane looking north. You can see the trees on the left-hand side there. Again, same trees looking south. The trees are now on the right-hand side. Thank you. So I'll just get rid of that for a minute. So the tree preservation order was served on the 15th of May 2020, and the provisional protection that the order gives will cease on the 15th of November 2020 if the order is not confirmed. The tree preservation order was confirmed following concerns that a number of trees had either been felled or have fallen in recent years, and the making of the tree preservation order will protect the trees and allow for replacement planting to be undertaken if trees are removed or fall in future years. We've received one letter of rejection, and the rejection can be summarised as follows: that the trees are in a dangerous condition, and that no advance notice was given regarding the making of the tree preservation order. So taking those individually, one by one, The council will look upon an application to undertake works to any trees that are considered to be dangerous, and indeed, following the making of the original tree preservation order, an application was made to fell one of the beech trees, and that was subsequently granted. And that tree is now being felled, subject to a replacement tree being planted. With regard to advance notice being given to the making of a tree preservation order, this is generally not given to reduce the possibility of any preemptive felling being taken. So the trees are considered to provide a great deal of visual amenity to the area, particularly when entering and leaving Ipplpen. Accordingly, the recommendation is that the tree preservation order is approved unmodified. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Ward member, Councillor Dewhurst, you've asked to speak, so over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So firstly, I'd like to just make a declaration of interest. I own property at either end of Dornerfield Lane, and I've probably walked or driven past those trees more than once or twice every day for more than 40 years. These trees are absolutely iconic to our village. They're a stand of beech trees, absolutely beautiful trees, and they have one by one been picked off by weather and decay over the years. So the council took this tree order when tree operatives were actually chopping down trees. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, no work has been done to maintain the trees at any time during the last 40 odd years. And I think part of the problem has been the fact that there was considerable sort of disagreement, you might say, as to who actually the trees belong to, because they are on the highway side of the boundary hedge of the property known as Dawlish. But I think everybody is agreed now that they belong to Dawlish. They're part of Dawlish, although if you just looked at them, you would think they were part of the highway. So that's really the background to it. As far as I'm concerned, I'd really like my grandchildren to see these trees, and if they just get picked off one by one over the years. We lost one in January this year at the just to the right of the second picture that you saw, and it was sort of basically, we then had problems with the high winds earlier on this summer and early autumn, and that's when the tree order was made. So I would just like to urge my colleagues on this committee to follow that recommendation from our officer and actually declare these trees preserved along with many other trees in our village. Ipplpen has got loads of trees, I'm pleased to say, and that's because they've all got TPOs on them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'll move the recommendation then, which is before one on the text here, that the Tree Preservation Order 2020 is confirmed unmodified. That's for Dornerfield Lane.
I'll second
Someone
that.
like to second that?
Councillor
Who was
McGregor,
that,
I'll
please?
second it.
Okay, right, it's been seconded. Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak? Nobody's indicated, in which case we'll take the vote on that then, please. So it's the recommendation is set out to approve it. So you vote for, against, or abstain. So Chris, could you go through, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
For.
Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Clarence.
For.
Councillor Colclough.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hook,
For.
Councillor Jeffrey,
For.
Councillor McGregor,
For.
Councillor Nuttall,
For.
Councillor Nutley,
For.
Councillor Patch,
For.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury,
For.
and Councillor Haynes.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Yep, thank you. 14 votes for, none against. So that's carried. So that is confirmed. Right, if we move on to the next application, 7B, another site elsewhere in Ipplepen, and ask Mark to take us through that one, please.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah, that's it. I can see that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so sorry about that. So this report concerns the district of Teignbridge, Altoona number 2, Tree Preservation Order 2020. The Tree Preservation Order was made on the 9th of June 2020, and the provisional protection will cease on the 9th of December 2020 if it's not confirmed. The original order was made as an area designation, and following discussions with the representative and the agent of the site, it's now proposed that the order is confirmed in a modified version. So instead of being an area order, it's proposed it's confirmed, I say, in a modified form. So this will include 13 individual trees and 3 groups of trees. Just looking at the site from various different angles. So this is photographed from the south. From the east, so we're looking at these trees here, pine trees here. And from the west. Thank you. So the tree preservation was made because the trees contribute significantly to the visual amenity of the area. 3 letters of objections have been received, and the objections can be summarised as follows. The trees cause shade to gardens and dwellings by restricting light. Detritus falls from the trees into gardens and also box gutters. And roots from the trees may or do damage hard surfaces and structures. So these letters of objections have principally been received from adjacent property owners. So taking those objections one at a time, the Council's Arboricultural Officer acknowledges concern expressed by the objectors. The making of the tree preservation order does not prevent the reasonable management of the trees. Accordingly, the objectors are encouraged to discuss their concerns with the owners of the trees, and then the council will look upon any applications that came forward to prune the trees sympathetically. The council's arboricultural officer, as always, is available to assist adjacent residents with the filling in of application forms if that's required. So in essence, because the trees are so important to the visual amenity of the area, it is proposed, as I say, to recommend that the order is confirmed in a modified form from an area to protecting individual trees. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Again, Councillor Dewhurst has indicated he wished to speak as ward member. So, Councillor Dewhurst, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I couldn't find my unmute button because of that's better. The screen's back. So yes, just as with last time, I mean these trees are important trees in our village. One of the great things, in my opinion, about Ipplepen is the number of beautiful trees that we have in our village, and the fact that sadly, when some of them come to the end of their lives, we can actually insist on new trees being replanted, proper new trees, not just as a quick whip or something like that. And that maintains our tree cover. Most of the trees in the village are covered either through conservation area or specific TPOs, and we'd really like to continue that. So once again, please, colleagues, let's keep Ipplepen looking beautiful, and I urge you, please, to support this motion from our tree officer. Many thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Nobody else wishing to speak? Again, as previously, I'll move the recommendation that's at the top of the text. So, oh, right, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Patch.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask the TPO officer, the change from the area designation to the individual trees. I think there were 13 trees now being protected was mentioned. What's the sort of net loss of coverage in terms of number of trees from that change? Is it possible to say?
I think if we look at the this is an aerial photograph of the site here that you can see. I think, can you see that?
Yes.
Not at the moment. It's not on screen.
Okay, sorry. Let me just see if I can share my screen again. Okay, sorry. Can you see that now?
Yes. Yep.
So this is the aerial photograph of the site. So you can see that the vast majority of trees are protected. There's some small scrubby little growth here that's not protected. So in essence, all the decent trees on the site are going to be protected. So I think that gives you a rough idea of what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Right, thank you. So I moved the recommendation. Is that seconded?
I'm happy to second that, Mike.
Okay, so that was Lynn, wasn't it? Yep, there we are.
It was.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Goodman Bradbury. Right, thank you. Okay, so if we could get the screen back if nobody else is asking any questions. Doesn't look like it. Okay then, so it's been moved the recommendation that the amended, I've got it before me somewhere, it's confirmed in a modified form, and that was seconded. So can I ask Chris to go through the vote, please, on that?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bradford.
For.
Councillor Bullivant.
For.
Councillor Clarence.
For.
Councillor Colclough.
For.
Councillor Cox.
For.
Councillor Hayes.
For.
Councillor Hook.
For.
Councillor Jeffrey.
For.
Councillor McGregor.
For.
Councillor Nuttall.
For.
Councillor Nutley.
For.
Councillor Patch.
For.
Councillor Goodman Bradbury.
For.
And Councillor Haynes.
For.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you, so that's approved. Thank you. Thank you to Mark. Right, on to item 8 on the agenda, which is the appeal decisions to be noted. So that's just the normal list, so members can see that there was a sort of a mixed bag there, and there's no points to make on that. In which case, with item 8, that then brings us to the end of today's agenda. So thank you all very much for your attendance. As it turned out, we may have got away without having a comfort break, but you never know with these things. And I didn't know where Alistair was coming from, so it may have gone on a bit longer. So thank you all very much, and look forward to seeing you all soon. Can I just ask the officers and perhaps the Vice Chairman to hang around when everyone's logged off, just have a quick chat? Okay.